Dapper, joined by Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent and Johnny Ward, the broadcaster and journalist, as always, to talk about the beautiful game. Teams are in for Man United against Norwich here at 3 o'clock. De Gea in goal with Dalot, Lindelof, Maguire and Telles across the back. Pogba in midfield. And then quite an attacking lineup. So Sancho, Bruno Fernandes, Jesse Lingard and Elanga, all behind Cristiano Ronaldo. So they're all going to be impressing Erik ten Hag, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem finally we have a bit of finality. Like we were sort of chatting about a small bit off air. Like I got a bit fatigued by the whole Manchester United thing, because this will they, won't they, who's it going to be and stuff. And you're like, right, now something has happened. Now they've made their move, they've made their decision. You're reading some of the reports this week. It does look like he's prepared to dump Ronaldo, which is
does he have to?
Controversial. Well, I can't imagine there's a real financial obstacle to it, other than because all these clubs, when it comes to it, they have money to solve problems. I know there's obviously a commercial angle to Ronaldo and stuff, and you can argue the rights or wrongs of doing it. And I think certainly I'm sure it's a divisive one, but at least it's a decision. Like ultimately, you're reading the reports this week and the coverage, and it seems like they very much are signing him to be a coach, as opposed to be like a powerful figure who, like
Fergie.
Yeah, and maybe I think it was a James Ducker piece I read in the Telegraph, which was on this, which was very much suggesting that even Pochettino, there was a feeling, would he be one who would want too much of a say, and that by going for Ten Hag, they're like, right, they want someone who's going to sort of implant a football philosophy or a way of doing things on the dressing room. So as such, maybe is it easier for him to just come in and say, well, I want to play in a particular way. You've hired me to do this. This particular player doesn't fit this. You sort it, if you know what I mean, rather than it becoming a sort of a thing where he has to
Ten Hag versus Ronaldo, Ten Hag versus Pogba.
I think if he ends up in that, he's not going to win it.
No, he's not.
So I think you probably need that problem to be taken out of his hands by his superiors. And Ronaldo, I can't imagine, it's not in his character to sit there and not play. I don't think he'd be a great influence in that scenario. He's got a World Cup in December, so I'd imagine, and he's always got something else he'd want to conquer.
Is there anybody who could buy United out in terms of Ronaldo? I was reading up to 40 million a year he's on. Would anybody in the States buy him out?
Yeah, the States would be funny, because they'd be the league buying him as opposed to a club. I mean, the MLS sort of model. I'm sure they'd be willing to consider that very strongly.
I think you're right, though. I think he needs to be able to make his decision. Ten Hag needs to be able to say, if I don't want this guy, and the United, I need to back him, because United have been driven by, as you say, commercial decisions rather than footballing decisions for too long.
Yeah, I think if it is the suggestion is that they're hiring this guy purely for the football side to sort of create a team in a particular style that he wants, then you can't sort of have legacy issues that hinder that. And it may well be that the job is too complicated, because he can't clear out the entire dressing room, and he's going to have to deal with that. But this is obviously a big one, and you have to trust that these reports are true, and that this is the. But if he does genuinely believe that Ronaldo doesn't fit with what he wants to do, then that has to be sorted, because otherwise it becomes a real issue for him. Because what's going to be the number one question you're going to be asked about all the time? Understandably so. It's the most famous, or one of the most famous names in the world, who will
also getting a year older,
who will be photographed on the bench every time he's not playing. Yeah, if that's the case,
or if he's not slapping phones out of kids' hands.
Imagine he'd go off somewhere exotic, because in Europe his limitations would be a bit.
I don't know what you mean. Like, where do you think?
Like maybe US or something like that. I don't know. Like, it's hard to see a top European club going for
not at 37 years of age.
It's not like I think Ronaldo's still a bit of a freak of nature at his age for what he's doing. Like, I think it's probably just that
at an elite level, to be able to play in a pressing style.
Yeah, it's not,
if that's the style that you want to play.
Exactly, and
go home, go back to where he started or something like that. Because he's won leagues in X amount of countries. Maybe you might to do it somewhere else or something.
Still Spurs 0, Brighton 0 in the Premier League. 78 minutes gone at the new White Hart Lane. Shane Long on the bench for Southampton against Arsenal. So Arteta has seen the error of his ways from last week, so he's put Xhaka back into midfield. So it's Ramsdale in goal, with Cedric Suarez right back, Gabriel and Ben White, and then you have Nuno Tavares, who's got the chance now at left back with Tierney injured. Sambi Lokonga, Xhaka and Odegaard in midfield, with Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli and Eddie Nketiah getting a start up front. So Lacazette not involved today. Lacazette, I was reading, only had scored 4 games in the Premier League this season. So will Arsenal come through in that one at 3 o'clock? And we also have Watford against Brentford from 3 o'clock as well. Just going through the teams there. No Irish interest, but Brentford have been excellent. A great team to watch, and Ericsson back in the team there again today. So he's been pivotal since he's come into the side there for
one of the truly feel-good stories.
It's a great story.
Of
great story.
Football history, I think.
Last night you were at Shamrock Rovers St. Pat's. Dan.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like sort of again, like 7,500 people there, and it's almost becoming something you expect. Decent crowds like that, which is
that's
great.
Capacity now.
Yeah, it was pretty much.
Got to mention the model of Milltown that you saw on the way in.
Oh
so
yeah,
cool.
there was. I would have posted this on Twitter. So there's a Shamrock Rovers fan, Mick Kearns, the sort of well-known Rovers fan, who during lockdown, and everyone did their own project in lockdown or did various things and committed to certain, good habits or whatever. He decided to build a replica model of Milltown.
Right.
Working
Glenmore
off
Park.
Glenmore Park in Milltown. And it's incredible. Like, it was sort of a cardboard job, but it took him a year to do it. The detail, the sort of granular level detail of like the turnstiles, where they were, just, I posted on Twitter, it's sort of hard to describe it, but it's unbelievably precise. I think he worked off a particular picture or something to mould it. But anyway, that was one element of it. The game, I mean, Shamrock Rovers were quite good last night. I just really enjoyed the atmosphere and the occasion. The game itself maybe didn't quite ignite, but when you had Shamrock Rovers, who were 6 points behind beforehand, facing into a tough run of games, and they won, and then the news comes through that Derry have lost at home to Shelbourne, all of a sudden it's 3 points, and you think, yeah, like Rovers are motoring. So the story last night was more so, I think, Damien Duff and Shell's shocking Derry as opposed to what Rovers did.
Yeah,
Rovers
I think the biggest story was Bows. Bows have collapsed in so many games, JD. I think if you going into last night, if the table were deemed on how teams were doing after an hour, Bows were top. If the table were deemed on how teams did in the subsequent half an hour, Bows were bottom of the table. They were. Finn Harps got a player sent off early. They ended up going behind Finn Harps, went 2-1 up. Finn Harps got another player sent off. They're against 9 men, and they somehow implode in like the 94th minute or whatever it was and concede again. And I don't know what is going on at Bows. It's an amazing collapse. And as Dan says, Damien Duff embracing Shay Given at Brandywell. It's great to see two proper legends of Irish
Shay
football.
there just watching, was he?
I guess
Damien Duff said after, he was like joking, if I was Shay, I'm assuming Shay Given's home. And he said, if I was him, I would have been in Lifford sipping pints, But he came down to watch Damien Duff. I mean, this is the one point. All of Damien Duff's former teammates are fascinated to see how it goes.
Yeah.
I've encountered this. We've had one or two of them on the show. They're all following how Shells are doing. And the striking thing with Shells and Duff, they've never they haven't lost away from home.
Well, they've actually taken from 5 games away from home,
and they've only 1 point from 5 games at home, which is mad. So he's created a team that's very good away from home and hard to be and efficient. They just
What's
need
the
to
style?
Translate it. Well, they effectively play with a similar system to Shamrock Rovers, with a sort of a back three, but it's quite a defensive setup ahead of it. It's people say sometimes the 3 at the back is a defensive formation because you have an extra defender and you can make it a sort of a 3-5-2 or a 3-5.
It's a 5-5 at the back at times.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And they're quite difficult to sort of penetrate. Their first game of the season that people might have watched on TV, they got done on the counter attack 3 times effectively, or twice out of 3 goals, and I think that was a bit of a scarring experience. So they've tightened it up. The issue they have is scoring goals, but obviously away from home.
And nearly every League of Ireland team has a problem in scoring goals in some respect. Like, a lot of the main strikers are quite old, or they're just not banging in goals necessarily. It's not an easy league to bang in goals. And I don't know, Dan, it's Joey O'Brien as well. So, are Damien Duff and Joey O'Brien going to become a thing now? Because they probably are working very well together. And I think Joey O'Brien, we had Ed Irvin on our podcast during the week, and he was
he's a Shelbourne midfielder.
He was just saying how Joey O'Brien's knowledge of the game. Joey O'Brien was you could probably tell from his time at Shamrock Rovers that he was going to make a good coach, because he was so important in that and so vocal and such a leader. But Shells are still third last, which is mad, because I think he'll be generally quite happy with how it's gone.
Well, there's 3 points between 3rd and 8th, but Shells and Bows play at 3 o'clock on Easter Monday. There's an Easter Monday amount of games. Now, I'd imagine tickets for that game will probably sell out pretty quickly.
I'm just interested.
But if not,
So Hearts 2, Hibs 1, by the way, in the Scottish Cup. That's into extra time now. The Edinburgh Derby. How many could fill Tallaght Stadium last night? 15,000?
No. But I think
the
the point, JD's point would be if more people. I don't know. I think the Bows Rovers one is interesting this Friday because it's a daily mount this coming Friday, and like that's going to be restricted to maybe 4,000 or something like that. I reckon you could sell comfortably sort of double that, maybe a bit more if they were going. I think Rovers Pats. That might have been the ceiling of that game, or maybe a little bit more.
Early in
but
the season.
The Rovers Bows game in Tala earlier in the season, for example, that's so. I think there's certain games. The idea, I saw Dermot Looney actually as sort of an old mate of ours, but he was also on the South Dublin County Council, and he said that when they were building the third stand in Tala, there was some people who were against it, saying, "Well, they'll never fill that." Now they're in the process of putting a fourth stand into Tala to bring the capacity up to 10,000 or so, and I think it's realistic to think that league games can attract around 10,000 at them.
I think a lot of the thing with them,
which wouldn't have seemed, to be honest, and we'd be quite positive about it. But a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have imagined that would have been the case. But now, a lot of kids, people going, there's something happening.
Everything is marketing. Obviously, it's the quality of the football as well, but marketing is a huge thing.
I think with Shamrock Rovers, though, I think the quality of the football you're subjected to in Tala at a comfortable stadium is actually very important, because if you go to Shamrock Rovers game, it's invariably good football, and that's you can't just say to if you market the League of Ireland, but if you go to the ground and it's a dump and the football is bog standard, people aren't going to keep coming back. So the football has improved massively in terms of watchability in Ireland, I think.
But I think sorry, I know we want to move on maybe, but just the one thing I would say, and I was thinking about this last night, the amount of kids there, but also from teams, they have partnerships with various clubs,
right?
And you could see, I was
all the underage teams as well.
I was quite early there last night, and there was a whole team combined. I'm not sure what team they were. Might have been Cardiff, and there were 50 of them walking by together, and there was a gang of them screaming, Rovers, a couple of them screaming Pats, but they were buzzing to be going to this game, and they were all being brought by their managers or whatever. They're all in their tracksuits of their club,
right? And
I think that's a massive part, and I do think Johnny's touching on it. I think the underage leagues, the national underage leagues, that all of a sudden you do have under 13, under 15, under 17, under 19, and Rovers actually had been starting this already before that started, but it actually does give people a bit more of attachment with the club. I saw Dara Burns, who's a star player for St. Pat's, who's going to be an excellent player. He was speaking the other day about going to Richmond 2 years ago because he was involved with the 17s, and as a result he then started to go and watch the first team. I think there's a lot more of that now, where there's an attachment as opposed to the first team just being like the first team and that's it. No wonder. So I think that all of a sudden parents, they're like, well, my son plays for, or my daughter plays for, they're underage, let's go and watch the first team at the weekend.
And I saw Gavin Bazuna's debut for Shamrock Rovers, and that's the thing, you might see a future star. There are probably
James Abankwah was playing last night.
Yeah, James Abankwah. I was looking last night at James Abankwah and Dara Burns on the same side of the pitch for St. Pat's. It's not 1,000,000 to 1. It's probably much shorter odds that both of them could probably be capped at senior level,
right, for
Ireland one day.
5-3-106. Hats off to the Duffer and Shells. Great win last night. I think the marketing around the women's team has been excellent. I'm not just saying that because we were able to put Sky here, but we know who Katie McCabe is now, Denise O'Sullivan, and once again I'm thinking to myself, there's no reason with a huge push to the people in the country that you couldn't have 40,000 people at that game against Finland.
I totally agree.
And if pricing is competitive as well.
Yeah, you saw the Northern Irish crowd against England was 59,500 thereabouts. So that's a template. The Sweden atmosphere, I thought it was a great vibe in the ground in the game. I think I've said this for a long time. I think women's sports going to explode, and I think so many We met our friend Derek's daughter during the week, and she's a young footballer. She's 12, and just to see her eyes light up when she spoke about the Irish team and going to games and that, and it's I think particularly for young girls who want to get into sport, this is so uplifting for them to see Katie McCabe. And granted, what I loved about the game in one respect was it was such an Irish men's performance of old, where it was
best ever won
backs against the wall. It was so I was mesmerised by Sweden at times. Some of the skill, I really was. I have to admit, I don't watch that many women's games. There's so much sport in my life that there's only so much I take in. I really enjoyed it, and the Irish spirit and the skill of Sweden, and that's where Ireland have to be looking to get to talent-wise. But I think it's going to explode. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting debate you raise about the Aviva, because this game against Finland is such a big game. It's a huge game. But then do you want it to become the subject of this big novelty experience where you get people going? This is a big match. Part of me almost thinks that's something that you should aspire towards. But within this campaign,
Brighton have scored. Leandro Trossard 1-0 against Spurs, 89 minutes.
See, Matt Doherty was the key to the whole Spurs revival, JD.
He was.
This is what's happened. But I think there's a slight danger. You make this, the type of event you're talking about, I can understand a big push to it, but I think there are lots of people going who maybe don't regularly go, and as an atmosphere, does it become a little bit sort of dilutes the importance of the event, whereas it's not a case of the big thing that this team needs to do is qualify for a tournament. Pack Tala, which they haven't done yet, they've come close to it, but they haven't actually done it. Play? I'd be very interested to hear the opinions. I think longer term, I'm sure they want to play in the Aviva, but I think the players want to play in the World Cup next year. And what gives them the best chance? Is it the place that that's a bit smaller, but you can actually make it a little bit intimidating and full and give it a...
What about 4 times that people, though, if they could...
4 times that people, but in that sort of cavernous stadium, which can be a bit strange if there's not...
I was in Lansdowne for Bows games, the 8,000, and there was a good atmosphere.
Yeah, it was, but that was 8,000 Bows fans just singing. The dynamic at the women's matches is dramatically different, Johnny, as you know. Like, it's a lot of younger people going, which is great, but I'd be a little bit sort of on defence about that. I think it's what they should be aspiring towards, but should you be using your biggest game in years as that type of experiment? I'm not so sure. I think it's all about getting to this tournament, and then that propels it. All your pre-tournament friendlies and all that, you have them in the Aviva, and that becomes the thing. I just don't know. I'd be a little bit on the fence. I can see the idea of they've moved the Women's Cup final to Tala as well. I was at it last year, and there was only maybe 3,500, but it was a better event than 500, 1,000 in the Aviva as a warm-up to the FEI Cup final, when it's just the acoustics weren't great, and it's a bit sort of, I don't know. So I think I'd be interested to hear the opinions of the players and people involved.
Another part of the League of Ireland thing as well, when you're going to get clubs now with dual teams and that goes down into underage, it just becomes this massive family where you'll get like coaches crossing over, and you'll get a lot of the supporters of one team going to watch the other, and I think that's where the League of Ireland still has an awful lot of potential, as well as the underage. 5
minutes to stoppage time at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham 0, Brighton 1, and Brighton, to be fair, I think deserve this. They frustrated Spurs all day, and Leandro Trossard very well taken goal, the Belgian, as they go on the attack again, Brighton, to try to make it 2-0. This would be a bad blow for Spurs in the race for the 4th spot. Now they're still going to be ahead, even if Arsenal win against Southampton today, but this is not the result the Spurs wanted. Tottenham will always let you down in the end.
That top 4 race has got some life left in it.
It's going to be...
At one point we thought that was all the season was going to give us until the Premier League race was reignited.
Like you mentioned basically a Roy Keane comment there. Like, is it not mad that like Stephen Kenny is asked to talk about Roy Keane talking about a goal celebration, and that's the news story, and I'm there like, this is ridiculous, and then I still end up reading it.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Johnny, I think you've forgotten.
What tangent is this?
Johnny, you've joined the sentence. It's like you've joined this conversation halfway through it.
Roy Keane's comment about Spurs will always let you down.
Is that what he said?
As far as I know.
Okay.
So if I'm paraphrasing. But so Stephen Kenny is asked to comment on Roy Keane saying we over-celebrated the goal against Lithuania. It was like, the Roy Keane spectre, will this ever end? Like,
it was Laro, actually, I took that out of.
Oh.
It was Laro.
I think you'll find, Johnny, that the one person who introduced Roy Keane to this show today was you.
Yeah, that's the irony of it.
So,
and I still read...
We're going to clip this now. We'll get about 20,000 views on our Twitter page.
Somebody asked me yesterday.
Johnny and Roy Keane.
You brought him up in a completely the wrong context, and you've now added Roy Keane to this football hour.
Roy Keane called after Sir Robert Peel.
He was called after a horse, Shady.
He was a bit keen. He raced a bit keen.
He was actually a Spurs fan when he was young, Roy Keane.
The expression raced a bit keen was actually true with Roy Keane.
The goal scorer was Troy Parrott. Shane spoke about last week. What about his goal since for MK Dons? Like, I mean,
named after the wooden horse of Troy, of course.
Yeah, okay, we've taken that a bit far now. But Troy Parrott, I think that goal they celebrated because it meant a lot, and his confidence is actually mad high after it.
There's nothing wrong with celebrating goals.
Exactly.
What is the best ever goal celebration? I always just think
Gotta be Tardelli.
Yeah,
Gotta be Tardelli. Yeah.
Dan, you agree?
I mean, the whole players on the pitch ripping the piss out of Phil Brown was pretty good, to be honest.
Oh, Jimmy Bullard.
Yeah, it was Paul McShane's idea, though.
Was it?
It was Paul McShane's idea.
Right.
He just didn't get to score the goal. So people think it was actually Paul McShane's idea, apparently. That one where remember this? They recreated the lecture that Phil Brown did. So, yeah.
Tamori Ketsbaya as well.
Newcastle, was
yeah,
it?
that was
an angry one.
They absolutely lost the plot.
It wasn't one he'd worked on in the training ground a couple of days previously.
That was amazing, yeah.
I'm trying to think of an Irish football celebration. Ronnie Whelan's was good.
Yeah.
In 88.
Yeah, that was more sort of a Tardetti.
Robbie Brady, obviously, the photos of him, maybe that wasn't the celebration itself, but they were good days.
We're short on sort of.
Troy Parrots against Lithuania was great, I thought.
Do any pundits have anything to say about that, or going to bring him up again? No.
I don't know, why does Stephen Kenny have to answer this, and then I end up bringing in the story totally out of context because Roy Keane just hovers over us all.
Yeah. How do we see City Liverpool then going 3:30?
Have we got the teams? I mean, no, we're waiting for the teams to come out.
Yeah.
I mean, it is pretty significant, the sort of the De Bruyne situation. Although you talk about that freshness angle, and of course Liverpool made the 7 changes, but you still look at the City bench during the week, and they have options that they can bring into the situation to sort of freshen them up. And even from last Sunday, in terms of Gundogan, and they can rotate it, Mahrez and whatever way they want to play it. But I do take your point, some of the Liverpool frontliners weren't involved during the week, and you think that gives them a chance. But I don't know,
Interesting, there's no trains from either.
That's why it's on a 3:30.
It certainly makes it complex. But I don't know,
Have you been to an FA Cup final?
Yeah, I've been to quite a few actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I've been to quite a few because purely work-wise with Irish involvement in them. So I would have been at the Man City Stoke one.
That was tour.
Then there was another one I was at where Everton scored early against Chelsea. Did Everton score early against Chelsea?
That's right, yeah.
I'm not sure, trying to figure out why I was at that one. Probably I'm not sure if it was Seamus Coleman involved or not. But I've been at a couple.
Is it an occasion still? Is it?
Yeah, it's still you have that thing where you come out of Wembley.
Brighton have won 1-0 away to Tottenham, and a blow for Spurs in the race for top 4 as Antonio Conte walks down the tunnel. Leandro Trossard with a late goal there for the Seagulls, well deserved. Yeah,
no, you come out of the tube at the Wembley station, and you have the Wembley way as it is now, and it's I was at the other one. Aston Villa were in it.
Arsenal was it?
I'm trying to think of the year Aston Villa where they won the semi-final where Grealish was exceptional.
Right.
I'm trying to think. So it's quite bad I don't remember the specific ones. But no, it still is, I think, today, because they've obviously messed around with it a bit, and it's never going to get back to where it was. But they've tried the sort of the evening kick-off.
Right.
They've tried, they've had it before the league season finishes and all these various incarnations of it. But it is one of those where you feel like it means more to the clubs. Like when Stoke were in it, it was a massive event for Stoke. They were the dominant. So all around the station, all coming up to it, they were everywhere. And you're always hoping that someone like that would be involved. I mean, you'd probably think this year
Crystal Palace
would be the story, with the team that would deliver that.
I think it mattered a lot to Damien Delaney, and probably mattered a lot to David Meyler when they were in finals and that.
But of course, yeah. No, I think. But I mean, the thing about it is that the big clubs, for all they say they don't take it seriously, they actually are the ones that are dominating the FA Cup now because they can afford to rest players and they still have the power to get all the way.
So Tottenham now play 32 games on 57 points. Arsenal have played 30 and they're on 54 points. They kick off against Southampton at 3 o'clock. Man United are on 51. In 7th, just behind West Ham on goal difference, and United kick off against Norwich. An attacking lineup for the game there, 3 o'clock, with Ronaldo leading the line, and Watford against Brentford is the other 3 o'clock match. In the Premier League, we've got commentary of West Ham against Burnley tomorrow. Thanks so much, lads. What's the Easter plan?
Oh, I'm pretty much not doing too much. I'm working. I'm going to a game on Monday. I don't know. Probably I'll find a time to watch Nashville, though, I'm sure.
Ah, yeah. Have you got a pick?
No, I was looking at Mr. Fog Patches and one or two down the bottom. Velvet Elvis, potentially. Tom Gibney, but don't have a strong opinion.
I think myself, Johnny, and yourself have all given about 8 horses, and none of them are the same.
Yeah.
I'm off to Hugo's for dinner with my American cousins. So
very good. Enjoy it.
Yeah. So enjoying Go United's big win last night when Manu Dimas was wearing gloves in 14-degree weather. I mean, what is it with modern day footballers?
RSC, was it?
What's that?
Johnny's ironically is someone who disliked Martin O'Neill's tenure, but he actually shares very similar worldviews around footballers wearing gloves and all this stuff.
Got a lovely winning goal.
Who else do you think as a pundit would have strong opinions on players wearing gloves?
Roy Keane.
Yeah. Have to get his. You're effectively second guessing his opinions.
This has been Football Saturday.